Have you ever been wide awake at, say, 2 a.m., and all of a sudden the solution to a problem you've been banging your head against for days just clicks? Well, you're definitely not alone. It's a super common experience, and believe it or not, there's some really cool science that explains why some of our very best thinking happens long after the sun goes down. So, let's dive in. Yeah, you know that feeling, right? The house is finally quiet, the world is asleep, and it feels like your brain can just stretch its legs. We're going to explore the psychology behind this whole thing and really figure out why that quiet, late night vibe can be such a goldmine for brilliant ideas. Okay, let's kick things off with the main idea here, which we're calling the midnight intellect. It's all about this really fascinating connection between intelligence and having a natural pull towards the nighttime. So get this, studies actually show a pretty interesting link. A lot of people with higher IQs say they feel way more productive, more creative, and just clearer in the head late at night. But why? What is it about the night that unlocks all this potential? To really get it, we first have to understand what's holding our brains back during the day. You see, the biggest challenge our brains are up against during the day isn't a lack of energy or anything like that. It's just a total overload of information. Our minds are getting constantly bombarded with noise, notifications, and all kinds of demands. And that brings us to this key concept, sensory load. I want you to think of your brain's attention like your phone's Wi-Fi signal. Every little sight, every sound, every interruption, it's like another device logging on, just slowing everything down. Before you can even think about deep thinking, you're just trying to manage all that traffic. And here's what that actually looks like in real life. Your phone is buzzing nonstop, coworkers are chatting, you've got the pressure of deadlines, heck, even the hum of the air conditioner. Every single one of those is like a tiny little tax on your brain's processing power. By the end of the day, you're just mentally wiped out. So what's the antidote to all this daytime chaos? You guessed it, the night. And it's not really about the darkness. It's about the silence. The world just powers down, and when it does, that crushing sensory load goes with it. And this, right here, is the key. Research suggests that highly intelligent brains can actually be more sensitive to being overstimulated. They just thrive when they can control their environment, dial down all that external noise so their own internal signal can finally come through loud and clear. And the night? Well, it provides that controlled environment automatically. This little comparison really puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? During the day, your brain is pretty much playing defense, just trying to block out all the distractions. But at night, once that sensory load is gone, it can finally switch to offense and start actively hunting for those cool connections and creative solutions. So what's the ultimate payoff for all this glorious nighttime quiet? Well, it lets our brains enter this really powerful state of focus that, scientists have a name for. It all comes down to something called cognitive inhibition. Just think of it like your brain's own personal bouncer, deciding which information gets past the velvet rope and what gets tossed to the curb. During the day, that bouncer is just completely overwhelmed by a massive crowd. But at night, the line is short and its job becomes a total breeze. And when that bouncer can finally relax a little, the rest of the brain can really get to work. It stops wasting all its energy on crowd control and redirects those resources to the main event. This is the moment it shifts into what's called deep processing mode. And that's the mental state where real insight and creativity are actually born. So let's just trace that path one more time. It's a simple but powerful chain of events. First, the night reduces all the external noise. This makes it way easier for your brain to ignore the few distractions that are left. And that frees up a massive amount of cognitive horsepower for complex, creative, and insightful thinking. Simple as that. Okay, so let's bring this all home. Why does any of this really matter? What can we take away from the science of being a so-called night owl? The big takeaway here is that those late-night bursts of brilliance, they aren't random at all. They happen when a sensitive, high-powered brain is finally freed from the crushing weight of daytime sensory overload. So maybe it's less about being a night owl and more about just being a quiet seeker. And this leads us to one last pretty provocative thought. If we know that so many of the most brilliant minds do their absolute best work in these low-stimulation environments, does our modern, noisy, interruption-filled 9-to-5 workday actively get in the way of our ability to think deeply? It's a question worth staying up at night to think about, isn't it?